Today we have a 2019 RAV4 hybrid engine, internal combustion engine, part of it that suddenly broke. This is our connecting rod that is spinning pretty good really on the crankshaft, so my guess is the crankshaft is still fine, but the connecting rod is broken, and it broke the whole block with the upper oil pan. It made a nice clean cut on both sides of the block, of the engine block, over there as well. That happened actually shortly after we repaired the cylinder head. We replaced the cylinder head because the original one had a crack behind the intake valve of cylinder number 4, and that crack was allowing coolant to leak into the combustion chamber. But the engine was still working fine, it was just consuming coolant a bit. So the customer drove it like this for a bit, topping it up, wondering where the coolant is going. And then finally decided to bring it in to repair. And we found the leak. We found that there was some coolant in the combustion chamber, but the engine was working fine at the moment. So we decided that it's probably okay, and no need to remove the oil pan and all that stuff to get the rod out to check it, because it was working fine. But apparently there was not apparently, it's my guess that there was probably a very slight minor hydrolock at some point of his driving, and that caused some damage to the connecting rod, which wasn't visible at first. Well, you didn't even look at it to see anything, but even if you did, you probably would not see anything, because the engine was working fine even after the repair. The engine worked great for about 1,000 kilometers. He was happy with it, he said it was working flawlessly, and then all of a sudden the connecting rod just snaps, and you're seeing what happened. So we're gonna take it apart completely and see if we can find out what actually happened. So let's get started. Okay, so our cylinder number 4 is here. I see some shavings, metal shavings, but oh yeah, and this valve has been hit. Looks like it's bent, but it's bent because the piston was just free, not because the valve broke. What do we see here? Lots of filings. I even see a bolt pad here. Oh, what a beauty. Oil pickup screen made of plastic. You gotta be kidding. This piece of is filtering out the oil going into the pump. That's insane. Toyota, I expected more of you. than before. What happened here? What happened here? Nothing much happened here. The rod broke. Somewhere in the middle, I guess. Here's all the other pieces elsewhere. You see the complete rod here. So it's probably broke up somewhere else in the block. The rings are okay. Oil control rings are also moving. Not much sludge. Everything looks okay. So I think my original assumption on the hydro lock prior to head replacement is probably correct. Yeah, all those marks are all okay. There's nothing excessive. I can't feel anything with my finger. Yeah, it all looks good. Every cylinder is roughly the same. Yeah. So all of these things could not have caused the rod to break. Yeah, it has some damage on the on the rod side bearing. Nothing on the cap. And that looks like a single bang. Could have been done during the hydro lock, or maybe at some point when it was just wobbling around the block. Doesn't really matter at this point. Okay. So This is all done. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day. And stay away from these cheap cars that they produce nowadays. You're gonna have issues that you don't want.